have a wonderful guest tonight, everybody. Thank you for coming back to the show. I have a wonderful guest. Her name is Frania Shelley-Grielen. She's an animal behaviorist. Now, normally I interview people that have affiliations with the arts, but I think this is very artistic in a sense, even though it's somewhat scientific at the same time. Frania actually works with animals. She's an advocate for animals, and she's also someone that has a little bit of knowledge about urban planning. And from what I understand, Frania, from your website, is that there's a connection between animal behaviorism and urban planning. And I welcome you to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you, TQ. It's great to be here, and there is definitely that connection. One of the things that's always interested me, being a city dweller, I'm based in New York City, is our interface when it comes to animals, when it comes to how much wild are we really going to tolerate. And we are starting to see, we're starting to see a lot more of animals that we would normally consider to be wildlife. For instance, New York City last year had quite a bunch of, it was in the news a lot because we have raccoons. And not just do we have raccoons, but we've actually had a couple of them that have tested positive for rabies. So huge cause of concern, even where you have that kind of a species, which they're really kind of innocuous and will keep to themselves, but rabies is still a very serious disease and certainly needs to be treated, and the city was vaccinating against that with the raccoon population. You also have things like deer that start to get into people's backyard, or you have things like in Illinois, I just read in the Wall Street Journal not long ago, they've got a problem with the skunk population. So even though we're city dwellers or we're suburban dwellers, we're going to start to look at animals in our backyards, and sometimes they're not as welcome as we would like to say that they are. So that's always interested me in what I've looked at, not just with the behavior of cats and dogs, the companion animals, but also the ones that we're willing to tolerate. You know, Bambi's one thing, but when it's eating your roses, how much do you like them?
That's true. I can remember once having like a Rosh Hashanah dinner with my in-laws and my husband, my in-laws, and it was that time of year, and I had grown these beautiful impatiens, and we come out to say goodbye to them, and there are two baby deer outside just like chowing down on my impatiens. So spray them a little bit with the hose, very, very humane. They scamper away, and the next morning you come back, and they have eaten every single impatient and left their signature bowel movement. You know, I'm like, oh, my goodness. But then people say they were here first. But they don't pay the mortgage.
They don't pay the mortgage, and that's the thing. You know, it's I can remember hearing people down in Florida complain because they would want to take their boats out on the river, and they'd have fish that would jump, and the fish would they would say, you've got to go really slowly, less than 20 miles an hour, which is really not so slow on a boat, or, you know, you're going to disturb the sturgeon, and they would say they don't pay the taxes, kind of a thing. It's like, who's here first? And you're absolutely right that it does it interferes with our human way of living, but it's kind of how much are we going to allow for another species to share the planet with us or share our backyards.
Especially our front yards and our backyards. It's kind of interesting. I know that where I live in New York State, there are quite a few there's wildlife here. You know, even in the city of the town that I live in, there are wildlife that if you go out late enough at night, you occasionally will see like a deer crossing the road, or you'll smell a skunk. I mean, we're all here together. So how does one go about urban planning for this? How do we do this?
I
think it's for everyone.
Well, this is the question, because it's what's our actual perception, what's our attitude, and what are we actually going to allow? So you have these planned communities in all different parts of the country, certainly in your listening area and just all over, where people have planned these green spaces. And in these green spaces, and these are mostly suburban, you're going to have, deer should be able to come, and skunk and raccoons and just about anything that would be native to that area. what happens is it's fine until it starts to intrude, until it starts to eat your impatience, until it starts to dig tunnels in your yard. And that's where it starts to become a problem, when we kind of want to look at, we need to shift a little bit in our attitude and to allow for it. Let me tell you a story about, I lived in Florida for a couple of years, and when I first moved down there, Florida's amazing. You have like all these fruit trees in your backyard. You know, you've got grapefruits, and you could have oranges, and you can have like just mangoes and avocado. And we had this huge grapefruit tree. And there I am. I'm this New York City girl, and I'm a nature lover, but I know nothing really about what a lot of things look like down there. So we go out and we find these grapefruits, and they've got these big holes in them. And we think, oh, my goodness, it's some kind of blight. So we take it to the local 4-H, and they tell us, well, no, you've got this type of rat. It's called like a roof rat that lives next to water.
Roof rat?
Roof rats. And the roof rats, roof rats love grapefruit. But now remember, there's maybe about 5 grapefruit that we're finding on the ground. And so you can get rid of them. You've got to put down pesticide, but you've got to take it up during the day because the squirrels will eat it, and you'll kill them. And we looked at each other, my husband and I, we thought, well, you know, it's just a couple of grapefruit. We all have to live. So it comes at some point, a point where you think, is it okay to share? And then the other part of this is, do we have too many of these animals because we've kind of taken over their space, and also we've gotten rid of natural predators, like we've got a ton of deer because we don't have wolves or mountain lions keeping that population.
Yeah, there are coyotes. I have to say that I know that in the neighborhood where I was living before this, when the deer seemed to sort of disappear, you didn't see them around. Suddenly, I would at least, because I have a dog that I would walk quite a bit, I would see coyotes, you know, and then when they would disappear, it seemed that the deer would come down out of the mountains again, and they'd be around again.
Oh, yeah, and we've got to also remember these animals, they don't see boundaries and maps and signs and borders and fences, and what they're seeing instead is good eating and places to live, and the ones that are kind of like these general species are really going to do well. We see so many more Canada geese now because we've changed the way we fertilize and the way we grow things, and they're staying year-round. We see more raccoons because we've got incredible, great garbage. You know, our city raccoons, there were studies that were done out of Chicagoland where we found Chicago raccoons were much healthier than the raccoons that you would find in the forest. They don't have roundworm because they're not eating like dead mice. They're eating our garbage, and our garbage has all kinds of good stuff in there, you know.
Yeah, healthy stuff.
Healthy, yeah. And then people complain about the raccoons, and it's like, if you raccoon-proof your garbage, they won't be able to get food. If they can't get your cat food that you're feeding your cats outside, they won't come in your backyard, you know.
Right,
so it's about also how much are we welcoming them with our own environment on the one hand, and then telling them that we don't want them to be there. They don't understand that.
Yeah, they don't understand that, and they have no idea what we're saying. You know, it's funny. There was a couple of times actually that there was a bear that came down from Bear Mountain and was actually playing on the jungle gym at the synagogue, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know if he was playing on the jungle gym, but I'm sure he
probably was.
Yes. You know, and I can remember going into the city of White Plains driving, and they were looking for this bear. I remember I was driving someplace, and this bear is running across the street, and he runs into the golf course, and, you know, eventually I think they caught him and brought him back to the mountains. But I guess we do things to beckon them, so I guess I can see the connection. You know,
definitely.
So I wanted to ask you, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just going to mention, when you mentioned the bear, it made me think of this story a couple of years ago in California. This was close to the Washington border, where there was a bar, and they wanted to increase their happy hour, and so they would have a dumpster, and they used to leave the dumpster open, and they would say, you know, bear watching. So it was bringing this bear close by so that people could see the bear go through the garbage. And if you've ever gone camping, you ever gone camping? What's the, you want to go away. One of the things they'll tell you is, hang up your food and, don't keep it down, because when an animal's looking for food, and a lot of the times when you see these big animals like that, they're hungry. So that's why they're getting close to people.
Yeah, and then we have the food, I wanted to ask you, and I could tell a lot of animal stories. I just wanted to tell you, ask you actually, about some of the stories we hear in the news. Like, I was there are two of them that strike me that make me think, like, wow, what is that all about? Now, I don't know if this is really something that you would know much about. One of them is about this cat named Meadow that kind of got away while the owners were on vacation, and ended up like roaming across the country, even lived in Brooklyn for a while. What's up with that?
A couple of thoughts on that one. Yeah, that you wonder if now, obviously there is definitely that finite possibility that cat could have gotten from, I believe it was Colorado, right?
I don't remember, but I remember being like stunned. And then when they found the cat had gained weight, was healthier or something. Not that it wasn't healthy before, but it had gained some weight, which I thought was like real interesting.
Makes you think that there might be a human involved, but maybe Meadow somehow got in with a different family, and that might have been part of where the movement comes about. There's that one story with the cat and this was recent, that had gone into the owner's luggage when they. If people have cats, you know what I'm talking about. You start to get ready for a trip, and they sit on your bag. They're totally aware of it. Well, this particular cat got into the luggage and got checked in, and ended up like in a different city. And but the other part of the story is the bags get switched, so the wrong person opens the bag in the hotel room. But all is not lost, because cat has an ID tag, and the owners get called. So there are stories like this, and usually what happens, TQ, is that it's somebody or the cat is somehow getting into some kind of a vehicle of transport, or getting in with the family, or even it's inadvertent. There's a story of a cat that ended up in a container in France. So you all have animals being moved in all different kinds of ways. One of the huge way we get invasive species in this country is they end up in the discharge water of ships. So we move animals all the time, intentionally or unintentionally.
Yes. You don't even realize it's actually happening. It's kind of like, I know people talk about when you move, make sure, well, I don't want to talk about that. Those aren't animals. They're insects. I don't know if insects are considered animals. My grandmother was paranoid about insects. She didn't like boxes.
Right, cardboard boxes from the store, right? We were not allowed to bring those home.
No paper bags, because they hang out in the creases. I don't really know how true that is. Right? I do remember her actually like bombing the whole house because she thought she saw a roach drop out of a paper bag. It's like kind of. She was paranoid about it.
Well, roaches are going to are one of the most efficient life forms that there are. I mean, they are not my favorite, but anytime I study any kind of animal or any kind of a life form, you kind of have to respect something that is that amazing and that efficient and that able to really constantly mutate to withstand. I mean, when you think about the life cycle of a bug, especially a roach, it is so short. It's so minute. And they are able to have this really incredible survival of the fittest so that they can get away from more and more powerful insecticide. One of the reasons why insecticide is so lethal is because they keep having to make it stronger and stronger, because these bugs... Yeah, because these bugs won't die. Super bugs, super roaches. They'll be around forever. Yeah, and bugs also kind of look like extraterrestrials, or like, something that's from outer space to me, mosquitoes or whatever. But, I think that's interesting about Meadow. The other story that I find really intriguing that I see in the news, and then I'll talk about my dog. There's always a dangerous thing. But the other thing I find really interesting in the news that I've seen is the story about this cat that hangs around that's in a nursing home, and then when someone's going to die, he shows up at their door, the door to their room, and he sort of predicts the death or something, or he's kind of like, when you don't want to see that cat coming around you. Let's put it that way. Because if that cat's coming around you, your days are numbered. Not even, your hours are numbered.
from what I understand.
It's that time.
Yeah.
I've heard about this cat. I have, and then I guess the one way to look at it is that there's also a comfort that comes with having that cat come along, because apparently, from what I've read, it goes right up on your chest and comes really close to you. Yeah. The thing, animals, especially dogs, are starting to be acknowledged more. We don't know how they do it. We always, science, Western man, woman, humans, we love to measure. We always want to quantify, how are they doing it? Let's test it. How do they know the tsunami's coming? How do they know? But we are developing dogs, and they call them sniffer dogs. We know that, for instance, dogs have amazing powers of smell. The way they smell is the way we see, and maybe probably even more. And cats can actually, dogs hear better than us. Cats hear even better than that. So whatever their senses are, they live in a world that we can't even imagine, because we literally don't have those senses. But how they're able to detect these things, but that aside, and that if we could measure those senses, if you mentioned that you have a dog, okay?
Yeah, I have a dog. I have a delightful dog. And
so have you ever been
upset?
So have you ever been upset around your dog? Have you? Because I know I've been upset around mine.
Yes.
Forget the scientist. I'm just going to say, if I've ever been upset, and something that really upset me, or I'm watching a movie, or even maybe I'm laughing so hard that I'm crying, what's the first thing your dog wants to do?
Come in and nuzzle with you.
Yeah, they want to comfort you.
Yeah, they come around you. I've experienced comfort from my dog. Well, my dog is actually a very, very well-bred and well-trained pedigree guide dog breeder. She didn't become a guide dog, but she tested so high she became a breeder. And she transitioned to a therapy dog very easily during the time my husband got sick and ultimately died. And when he died, for me, what I was very surprised is that she sensed my grief. And what she would do is do things that she was trained not to do. And it wasn't that she was being bad, but she would get on the bed in the morning, because or in the middle of the night, because I would wake up and be grief-stricken. She would jump on the bed and comfort me, which was surprising. The other thing I noticed is that she, even though he had left a number of weeks before, the house a number of weeks before, after he died, she would run to the door at the same time every day, every evening, 7 p.m., with a toy the way she did when he was alive, and be ready to greet. She did that probably for a month.
She was waiting for him. Sure.
Waiting for him, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the animals do grieve. They do. There's a change. I mean, we see it a lot in elephant societies where we're really able to see that, because they're very demonstrative in how they do that. And in different kinds of species where maybe the behavior isn't going to be as big, for a long time, dogs they mirror us in a lot of ways. They've co-evolved with us. These are animals who have a primary sense of sense of smell, and they've gotten very visual in order to be able to communicate with us. So they're an easier read for us that way, because they're more like us. They've become more like us. But you look at a cat, and cats for a long time were thought not to be social, not to be affectionate, not to live in certain kinds of societies, to have family groups. And the reason for that is because of how they expressed this. Their gestures were smaller. They were more fleeting. So the point I'm trying to make when I talk about that is that you have all kinds of emotions, all kinds of sociality, all kinds of different things that animals are expressing that we may not be picking up on it because it doesn't look like what we do. But certainly, certainly if your dog came and even though she was trained not to get up on the bed, the overriding thing that she was also trained to do was to be there for a human. And
that's very true, and I think that it is inherent in her, which I think is interesting, I just think that the whole subject matter is just so interesting to me, but yet she still is a dog, and I always try to remind myself that this is a dog, not a person. Why is it that we assign our human traits onto animals? I just want to remind the audience that this is Frania Shelley-Grielen, and she's from animalbehaviorist.us. Animalbehaviorist.us. So why is it that we assign human traits? They call it anthropomorphification.
Yep,
is that the word?
Anthropomorphosis. And you can also find my website at animalsbehaving.com. That's also another, animalsbehaving.com as well. We do that, it's easier for us. But the one thing is kind of a dangerous thing to do. It's if we have a dog, you went out, you leave your dog at home. We've bred dogs, we've trained them, we've bred them to be so dependent on us. To be so needy, to want to be around us so much that sometimes when we leave them, they literally get sick and they get very stressed. And you'll hear people use different terms like separation anxiety. Whatever it is, the dog is upset that you're gone. So the dog can start to do things like rip the couch apart or not go through the garbage or do different kinds of things to express that. Depends. And what people will do is they'll come home and they'll say, they were mad that I left, and they did that to punish me, okay?
Oh.
So we're giving them these human things, which is true, is that the dog was stressed, but it kind of ends with that. The other thing that's scary is when you have something like you're calling a dog, you want the dog to come back to you. And come, and maybe it's just the command, and then when the dog does finally get to you, you start to get angry. Because bad dog, there's a joke that it's a cartoon, and I'm going back years, and there's a picture of this little dog, and it says, someone asks it, what's your name, and the dog goes, bad dog, bad. Because that's what it hears all the time. But the thing, bad. The thing is that we're like, you're bad, you didn't come, and the dog's like, no, I didn't come because you're going to hit me, or you're going to shock me with that shock collar, or do something
else. Hit me with that water pistol.
Hit me with that, exactly. I'm staying away from you. It hurts. But we kind of do this thing because we're putting what a human reaction would be onto the dog. To say a dog is good or bad, and this is another point, I don't know if this is what you were, but I'm going to go for this one anyway, is to assume the dog has the choice to make. They want to be bad. They want to be good. And what the dog really is, they're so much more, animals more so than humans, are very much, I'm going to get Zen-like on you, but they're really in the moment. The dog wants the ball because it wants the ball. The dog will jump up and down, not because it wants to be alpha and take the ball from you, but because it just wants the ball. There's no what happens next in that dog's head or the cat's head. They're very much linear in the way that they live. They don't plan what's going to happen tomorrow. They don't have the agenda.
As we are. And the Zen thing is relevant because a lot of people have referred to my dog as a Zen dog. My dog is very Zen. She's also very hedonistic.
Yes, definitely.
Very hedonistic. But, she's definitely very Zen. And I think that in a way you can take some cues from them. I try to rip a page from her book. It's very hard for a human being to be in the moment. And to some people, that's the challenge. I think that's the challenge of Zen, for me at least, to just stay in the moment and not live in the future or past. And animals are very good at that. They really are. They're very good at that.
Excellent. And I actually there's a couple of different articles on my website. There's a ton of information that's out there if people do have questions about cats, dogs, or wildlife, or a lot of things, just real simple things. And one of them that I see, and I call it dog dragging. Well, I'll see this is you see, people out there sometimes. There's amazing things you can just see when you're walking your dog. Sometimes when it's a really crazy day for me, I really look forward to the idea of coming home and walking my dog, because the idea of having to walk with her and allowing her to sniff, which is the most important thing for that dog to do, to have the time to smell. I mean, an urban dog or a dog now where you're in a more urban environment and where that dog's going to go out and do all this sniffing around the block is like running for a mile. It's very, very, very much an enervating activity. What happens is you see people kind of dragging the dog along. Let's go. They're in a
yes.
rush. Or the dog wants to sniff another dog's butt, which is what dogs do. It's a dog thing.
I call it the canine handshake.
Yeah. They're getting information, and we're like, that's disgusting. Not to them,
Yeah, I know. They pull them away and try to tell them to stop being a dog. You're right. And, I have to thank you because what you had told me about her reaction is true. She just loves the neighborhood. She does not seem to miss, not that she would enjoy it, but she doesn't seem to miss the rolling hills, the pristine, countryside. She's so happy, so much so that she doesn't like to come in. She'll even, lay down, right by the curb and put her paws on the curb, and she enjoys sitting there, laying down and watching the cars go by. Of course, I don't let her go out in the street, but she just loves that. It's like, I'm really, you really helped me with that. I don't feel as guilty as I did that I wasn't able to buy her a house, which was my original plan. Buy her another house, I should say.
And the thing about living in that kind of all you city dwellers take note, and if you're urban or if you're rural, the thing your dog really wants is to be with you. That's really number one. That's what the dog is really looking for. Is it's looking for that connection, that spending time with you. And in a way, when we do have our dogs, and sometimes we forget if we have a backyard, we're like, well, let the dog out. The dog still needs to go for walks. And they love that being connected to you, and they love going for walks, and they love exploring new things. Oh, yeah. New things.
Yeah, she definitely loves that. And, I walk her a lot. And it's funny, most people don't walk their dogs very much. And when they see us together, they're like, boy, where is she? If I'm by myself. And they say, boy, you walk that dog a lot. You really spoil her. No, I'm giving her the exercise that she requires and also giving her a life. She wants to be out there. She wants to be out there. She loves the excitement. She loves the smells. You're absolutely right about the smells. Every blade of grass, every pebble, every chewing gum wrapper, every cigarette butt. She sniffs everything. Yeah,
it's like she gets to sniff